Hi students, in this video we are going to solve question number 2 of May June 2015 paper 21. So let's start. The following information was obtained from the books of Adil. So we have balances on 1st February 2015 and we have the closing balances on 28th February 2015. So we have we have the opening balances on 1st February 2015 and we also have some closing balances that are given on 28th February 2015. And then we have the opening balances for the next month. The question says prepare the purchase as a control account showing the credit purchases made in the month of February. Now purchase as a control account is a total creditors account and the control account is prepared in order to check the arithmetical accuracy of the ledgers, that whatever entries that we have made in the ledgers are they accurate, whether we have made any error in it or not. That is the creditors individual accounts, that is whether we have made any error in it or not, or whether we have made any calculation error, or maybe we might have mistakenly forgotten to post any of the entries. So the creditors, the individual creditors, that is the purchases ledger, the individual creditors total balances, individual balances must tally with the total of the purchase ledger control account balance. If it tallies, it means that everything has been done correctly, the whole double entry process has been correctly made. Okay, so now let's post the entries into the purchase ledger control account. So the opening balance of the purchase ledger control account will come on the credit side, because the reason is that it's a creditors account, hence it has a credit nature. So 1st Feb we'll post the entry balance brought down, right, 17,160 is given in the question, right. Then on 28th February we'll write the closing. After that we'll include the purchases. Now purchases will increase the balance of the creditors, because when we purchase we increase the liability we have to pay to our creditors, hence the increase in liability results into increase in credit on the creditors account. Okay, now when we'll pay the creditors 32,500, it means that the liability of the creditors will decrease. So when creditors fall, it is debited, because the rule of liability is that when liability increases, you know the rule of liability, that when it increases it is credited and when it decreases it is debited. Okay, so when we'll pay our creditors, the liability will fall and hence we have to debit it, that is 32,500, will debit that. Similarly, when we make the returns, that is the purchase returns, again the liability reduces, because when we are returning them it will reduce the amount of debt we owe to them. Similarly, when discount has been received to us by the creditors or the suppliers, it will again reduce the liability, hence we will debit it. Now if you total the credit side and deduct it from the debit side, you will receive a closing balance. You will receive a closing balance of 8450. Okay, you total both sides and then you write the total, that is 45,660 on both the sides. The next step is to bring down the balance. Make sure you bring it down, because it always has 1 mark in your CAIE exams. 1st March, that is balance brought down, that is 8450. So this balance of 8450 is representing the closing balance on the creditors account on 28th February 2000. Okay students, now we'll move on to the next part of the question, that is preparation of sale as a control account. Now sale as a control account is basically the total, you can also call it the total debtors account, that is the total trade receivables account. Okay, and again what we need to understand here is that the total of the sales ledger, that is the individual debtors balances, must tally with the total of the sale ledger control account, which means if it does tally, it means that the whole double entry process has been correctly made and there is no calculation error, there is no arithmetical error, there is no errors in terms of posting or anything that we have made. Okay, so let's start with this question with part B, and we'll state the opening balance. We'll post the opening balance on the debit side, that is balance brought down 14,900, because debtors have a debit nature, it's an asset, hence it has the opening balance will be on the debit side. So if it's not mentioned in the question that whether it's a debit balance or a credit balance, unlike in this question it's already mentioned that it's a debit balance, so you always consider the nature of the account and post it on that side of the account. For example, if it's an asset account, so you post it on a debit side. For example, if you are making the T account of bank, right, so if you're making the T account of bank and there's an opening balance on the bank whatever the figure is, and the question is not mentioned it's a debit balance or a credit balance, so you'll post it on a debit side because bank is an asset. So on which side to post, you consider the nature of that account. Okay, so basically how many sales were made. For example, the total number of sales were 47,800. The debtors paid you how much? The debtors paid you 45,800. When debtors will pay you, it will decrease the asset, it will decrease the debtors, hence it will be credited. Similarly, you allowed them a discount of how much? You allowed them a discount of 2,700. It will decrease the value of the debtors, hence it will be credited. Bad debts will also decrease the value of the debtors, hence it will be credited. Now there is one more thing that is mentioned, that is how much? That is 200. Now it says check from trade receivable later dishonored. Okay, which means that when the debtor gave you a check of 200, right, that check of 200 was dishonored. That means it was cancelled by the bank. It was not honored, it was not accepted. Now this 200, the amount of 200 is included over here, okay, in the amount that the debtors have paid us. So because now the check has been dishonored, it will again increase what? It will increase the liability. It will increase the liability on part of the debtors. Okay. So for that, what you need to do is that you need to reverse the entry that you have made, and hence you will debit the dishonored check, because once the check has been dishonored, the debtors still owe us. So it will increase their debts. Okay. So hence you will debit it. Now you calculate the closing balance, and that is how much? That is 12,600. You add all that, you total the debit side and you deduct it from the credit side, and the balance comes to 12,600. And this is indicating what? This is indicating a debit balance, because the debit side is heavier. When you deduct it from the credit side, it gives you a debit balance. Okay, so how do you differentiate if it's a debit or a credit balance? I'll tell you. If, for example, if you total the debit side, it comes to 62,900, and when you deduct it from the credit side, it gives a balance of 12,600, which is a positive balance. Now, if the balance was negative, it means that the credit side is heavier than the debit side, which means that the remaining balance is now not an asset for us; it's a liability on part of us. Why? Because it's now receiving that we now, instead the debtors owes us, it means that we owe to the debtor. So on the debtors account, on the sale as a control account, whenever the balance carried down is coming in minus figure in your calculators, always put it on the debit side. The closing balance, that is a balance CD, will come on the debit side, representing a liability on our part. Okay, so now you bring down the balance 12,600. On 1st of March, make sure that you bring it down, as it has 1 mark, as I already mentioned in part A. Okay students, so that's it for this video. I'll solve part C in the next video. Till then, take care.